Hello and welcome to Daily News Analysis featuring ForumIAS. Today we are going to see the following articles and I'll also discuss some questions at the end of this video. Now without much further ado, we'll go into the first article of the day. So the first article talks about the Supreme Court ruling on the demonetization process. On Monday, Supreme Court delivered a judgment saying that there was no flaw in the union government's process to demonetize 500 rupee and 1000 rupee banknotes through a gazette notification issued on November 8, 2016. So we remember the demonetization exercise. Now the contention was that whether the process followed by the central government was according to law. Did they subvert the legal process? That was what was the contention. So, the majority judgment says that RBI Act's Section 26 Clause 2 was not violated just because the centre took the initiative to advise the RBI Central Board. But one of the dissenting judges, Justice Nagaratna, she gave the opinion that Central Board should have initiated the proposal and not the central government. If the central government had initiated and asked for the opinion of the RBI Central Board, and in case the RBI Central Board had refused, then the central government had to take a legal route to actually implement demonetization. But this was just the opinion of a dissenting judge. Overall, the judgment was in favor of the central government. Now, let us go into the analysis. What were the disadvantages of demonetization? So, when the demonetization happened, India's workforce was largely informal and these people were being paid in cash. So, if we are suddenly stopping the source of cash, they felt a lot of bottlenecks in getting their day-to-day salary even. And one of the reasons that was given by the government to carry out this exercise was to curb black money. But if you see, the black money holders, they don't just have cash. Cash is only small fraction of their holdings. They also hold gold, they also hold land, and they also have foreign exchange. So if we have to curb black money, demonetization is not the be all end all of it. It has to be a part of a comprehensive policy. So then it didn't serve its purpose. That is one of the criticism. And the third challenge was logistical challenge. In a vast country like India, which has so much of diversity in terms of geography and culture, there were only 52 days which were given for exchanging the banknotes, and this was a logistical nightmare at that point. And the next criticism is about consumer confidence. So consumer confidence in a particular economy is determined by how consistent the policy is. If there is a sudden change in policy, then obviously the consumer confidence would be eroded and that would be detrimental for economic growth. But then according to economic survey, there are a lot of advantages of demonetization. Coming to the present day also, we can see how much we have benefited from demonetization apart from the obvious disadvantages. The first thing is we have moved to a less cash economy, and in some places we have become totally cashless also. That is evident from the surge in the number and volume of digital transactions. In this regard, if you see in the judgment, the majority judges who delivered in favor of the government, they were telling that this particular notification, it is in accordance with the doctrine of proportionality. So whatever was implemented was proportional to the ends it was trying to achieve. Then the second thing is, because of demonetization, digital literacy and financial literacy has improved. People were forced to adopt this and there was no other go. So obviously digital and financial literacy improved. Even economic survey said that this particular exercise forced people to declare their income, and by which it was actually a tax on black money. It did serve its purpose, and because people were forced to declare their income, it led to increase in tax base. Even the economic survey has proved this with data. And as a result of deposition of bank notes in the bank, it increased the financial savings and the deposits in the banks increased. This exercise also led to formalization of the economy, obviously because so much cash came into the financial system, and thereby it increased the money multiplier. All those peripheral effects happened. And lastly, if we see the real estate sector, in real estate sector there was lot of black money playing. Because this cash was sucked, because the liquidity was sucked, there was a stabilization in price also. Alright, so now we will move to the next article. It is a editorial. It is about the state control of Hindu temples. So in this particular article, we need to learn some things from prelims perspective and some aspects from mains perspective. So in prelims perspective, we have to see about Article 25. Article 25 talks about freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion. Sometimes if you see, there has been questions on reasonable restrictions on a fundamental right. For this Article 25, the reasonable restrictions are public order, morality and health. Now, this particular article, it talks about Article 25 Clause 2A and Article 25 Clause 2B. This article talks about it. But there is a distinct difference between Article 25 Clause 2A and Article 25 Clause 2B. Clause 2A says that the secular activity of a religious institution can be regulated by the state. And Article 25 Clause 2B, it states that the purpose of this article is to enable throwing open of Hindu religious institutions to all classes and sections of Hindus. So this is about administration, and second part is about social justice. Remember this. It will be of use when we see the analysis part. Now, going on to the analysis part, this article quotes the Shirur Mutt case. This is a very important case. You have to remember it from mains perspective. Whenever a question comes in terms of doctrine of essentiality, in terms of Article 25, you can very well quote this case. It is a landmark judgment. Okay, so I will discuss about doctrine of essentiality in a while. Before that, we saw this Article 25 Clause 2A and Article 25 Clause 2B. The author says that these two articles, these two clauses actually coexist, and one is not dependent on another thing. They are two different things, and you can have laws which target these two activities. That is what he says. Now coming to doctrine of essentiality. See, what is state control of temples? State control of temples is that the secular activities of temple administration, the finances, logistics, etc. are to be controlled. And here doctrine of essentiality comes into play. For anything that is not associated with essential religious practice, anything that is not associated with essential religious practice can only be controlled by the state. Anything that follows the essential religious practice, it cannot be controlled by the state. That is what the article is trying to say. Now we will see some of the criticism against state control of Hindu temples. So if the state is encroaching upon religious affairs, isn't it against the principle of secularism that is enshrined in our constitution? This is the first criticism. Second criticism is misappropriation of funds. So much so that there is no money to even conduct pujas in some of the temples. For example, if we take in Tamil Nadu, the revenue base of all the resources that come under the temples is 10 lakh crore. But the realized revenue is only 120 crore. Where is this massive amount of money going? Either it must be faulty encroachment, faulty valuation, or some form of corruption that is going on in the HR and CE department. So one criticism is misappropriation of funds. And there is another thing called as this common good fund. What is this common good fund is? Certain temples which have significant income, they will be paying a certain percentage of their income. So if the temple has income beyond a threshold, this temple will pay certain percentage of their income to the HR and CE department, that is the Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowment Institutions department. Okay, so this is like a religious tax. You are collecting money from Hindu temples, and it is even sometimes used in general administration, which means one particular section of society is only taxed, which is violationary of Article 27. This argument is also put forward. And this HR and CE department doesn't even maintain records properly. If they don't even have records, how can they realize the revenue resources? That is also a criticism. Moving on. Why, if this particular state control of temples has so many criticism, why in the first place do temples need to be under state control? So as we know, these temples are huge cash generating institutions. So there is a scope for mismanagement. Hence, they should be under state control. And another argument in favor of this is essential practices are actually protected. Only the secular aspects are controlled. And the next thing is to abolish hereditary priesthood. So these acts which vest the control of Hindu temples to the state, they also abolish hereditary priesthood, which is a very good thing. So by virtue of this, temples should be under state control. That is one argument. Another argument is Hindus have no common religious head. So that if the state is freed, if the temples are freed from state control, who will then take care of the administration of Hindu temples? There is no one single religious head. That is one thing. And lastly, the most important argument is about social justice. To throw open Hindu temples to all sections of Hindu population. These are some of the reasons why state control of temples came about in the first place. Now we saw the pros and cons of this arrangement. We have to see a way forward, and we are picking out this way forward from the Madras High Court guidelines itself. So Madras High Court, when hearing a case on irregularities in finances of Tamil Nadu HR and CE department, they gave certain guidelines. We'll see them. It can be applicable for temples and HR and CE departments all over India. The first thing is the properties that belong to temple must be safeguarded. First is safeguarding. Then only you can realize income from properties. Alright. Then audit and safety of vigrahams. Vigrahams are the deities. We have seen in the past that these deities get stolen and they get sold in auctions, they get sold in foreign markets, and they are found in faraway countries like US, Australia, etc. So first of all, there must be an audit. We must properly take stock of all the deities that are there in the temples and form a plan for safety of these deities. Then there must be tribunals for speedy dispute resolution. So all these cases which allege irregularity of HR and CE go to the High Court, which is also not a very speedy process. Hence there must be specialized tribunals for this purpose. And the High Court also asked for participation of different stakeholders. Thereby a consensus is built. The community, the devotees, the government, activists, all these stakeholders must be involved so that there is a consensus in who will control or in what manner the temples are administered. The author is also saying that, when something is illegal in its original form, it doesn't mean it can become legal over time. He is saying that in what brand of secularism is the control of temples by the state valid. So this is illegal. There must be legal amendments to change the current scenario. And he is basically asking for improved accountability of the HR and CE department. Whether or not Hindu temples must be freed from state control is a faraway process. But before that, we have to plug the irregularities in the HR and CE department. So this is the analysis. We saw analysis from mains perspective. We also saw the provisions which are relevant for prelims preparation. Moving on, we'll go to the next article. This article is about prison reforms. So first I will mention the context of this article. Recently, in the Constitution Day speech, our President Srimati Draupadi Murmu, she talked about prison overcrowding. She talked about the prisons that she visited, and this is a wonderful quote from her. She is saying the progress is antithetical to setting up prisons, and we must address congestion in prisons in non-carceral ways. So antithetical, progress is opposite to setting up of prisons. Why? Because prisons are not the end solution for rehabilitating of these criminals, right? And we have to address congestion in prisons in non-carceral ways. Non-carceral is rather than just putting a person in jail. We have to address prison congestion in innovative ways. That is what she was delivering in her Constitution Day speech. And now recently, Delhi Lieutenant Governor, he has directed allotment of land for building a new prison complex. If you see, President is talking about prison overcrowding, and we are also building a new prison. Okay, you might think that, yeah, she has talked about prison overcrowding and now Delhi LG has allocated land for building a new prison. But that is not what it is. Just by building a new prison, we are not solving the problem at its root. We have to get down to the root of the problem, because India is a diverse society. It is a complex society. So the form of punishment, it should also be rehabilitative in nature. So if we are just putting a person in prison and then forgetting about them, there is no scope for rehabilitation, right? That is why this article is asking for different ways of solving prison overcrowding. Now we will first see what are the current issues. So the prisons in India are still governed by the Prisons Act, and it was enacted in 1894. Obviously it is a colonial legislation, which means it saw prisoners, and it still sees prisoners as subpar citizens. It doesn't see them as full human beings, right? And it envisages punishment to be retributive. So he did some crime and he has to be punished. That is retributive justice. But today India is a modern society. We need rehabilitative justice. These lines and all you can directly use in your mains paper. Justice must be rehabilitative rather than retributive. Secondly, this Prisons Act is actually very much casteist. So the rules that emanate and the rules that are followed in various jails in India, they are formed on the basis of Prisons Act, and in some of the rules the jail manuals still continue to focus on purity as prescribed by the caste system, and whenever the prisoners are assigned work, it is based on the prisoner's caste identity. So this is very appalling in a modern society like India, right? And also, currently Dalits and Adivasis, they form the bulk of the prison population. Here also the aspect of social justice is getting affected. And there is obviously prison overcrowding, and because of this there are implications on mental health. There might be brawls, there might be congestion, and because of that also mental health of the people, that is the prisoners, would be affected. And also there is understaffing. There is overcrowding and there is understaffing. Supply is also increasing, but so demand will also increase, but this demand is not fulfilled because the prisons are understaffed. And if there is understaffing, it would lead to inadequate security. They won't have the wherewithal to manage these many prisoners, and this will in turn lead to corruption. Because of prison overcrowding, there are also custodial deaths. It can be due to torture and abuse from the police. It can also be due to brawls and fights between the inmates also. So these are all the current issues. And what can be the remedies? The article talks about some remedies. It is asking for release of unwell and old inmates so that prisons are not much crowded. Reducing of penalties. So this needs to be addressed. The laws need to be amended so that there is reduction in penalty and thereby prison overcrowding is prevented. Allowing bail at affordable cost. Often the bail amount is so high that people languish in prisons. So making bail affordable would also prevent crowding of prison with under trial prisoners. These people don't have the money, these people don't have access to legal aid, and they languish. So if the bail amount is less, they can at least think of getting the bail till the investigation is complete. Anti-carceral ways of holding people accountable for their crimes. So putting someone in jail is not the only solution. There has been innovative punishments given by judges in terms of doing service in a children's home, doing service in outside temples. All those kinds of innovative punishments can also be helpful in addressing prison overcrowding. It is also helpful in establishing rehabilitative justice and expediting trials. Trials take too much time. It goes on for years and years. So trials should be expedited. And in this regard, we have two committees. One is Mullah Committee and another one is Amitava Roy Committee. These committees you can quote in your mains answers. Mullah Committee asked for setting up of a National Prison Commission, and this committee also opined that the convicted and the under trials should be held separately. Amitava Roy Committee asked for video conferencing for trials so that trials are expedited. Alright, so this is the analysis on prison overcrowding. This is mostly important from mains point of view. Going on to the next article, It is about the Forest Rights Act, which is an important topic from prelims as well as mains perspective. So why this news? Why are we discussing this? It is because new rules were notified under Forest Conservation Act, and according to these rules, the consent clause for diversion of forest land for other purposes, this consent clause has been done away with. Now the approval of the Adivasis and tribals, their Gram Sabha is not necessary, and hence National Commission for Scheduled Tribes says that this particular rule under Forest Conservation Act is in violation of Forest Rights Act 2006. So we have to see some of the provisions of Forest Rights Act. So firstly, Forest Rights Act give rights to traditional forest dweller and scheduled tribe. It gives rights to these two categories of people to hold their forest land and also live in that forest land. Not only hold but also live inside their forest. They can make habitation. They can also self-cultivate. And important to note here is self-cultivation only. That is for subsistence purposes. Alright. And these beneficiaries, that is the scheduled tribes and other forest dwellers, have the right to access, collect, use and dispose minor forest produce. Minor forest produce is nothing but non-timber forest produce. Obviously they can't fell trees, they can't hunt the animals. Minor forest produce example is tendu leaves, guar gum, etc. These are the minor forest produce. They can collect and sell it, thereby earn a subsistence. Then there is one aspect of forest rights is individual right. The another aspect of Forest Rights Act is community right, like usage of water bodies for fishing, usage of pasture lands for grazing. The community rights are also given through Forest Rights Act. Next, these communities have the right to protect, manage their community forest resource, and they also have right to intellectual property and traditional knowledge. We have seen in the CBD, that is Convention on Biological Diversity, there is a protocol called Nagoya Protocol for access and benefit sharing. So this FRA is in line with that protocol. According to that protocol, whatever benefits that come from this traditional plant species, any medicine prepared from that, the benefits should also go back to the community. So this Forest Rights Act is also in line with international protocols. What is the importance of this act? So this act prevents tribal alienation. How? Because tribals are provided with land titles and they are also given rights to collect minor forest produce. They are also given community forest rights. They are not alienated from their land also, and they are not economically alienated because there is some source of livelihood because of community forest rights that they get from the Forest Rights Act. It also curbs Naxalism. How? Because the thickly forested areas of India, they are also hotbeds of Naxalism. If there is economic empowerment, radicalization would not take place, and hence FRA is very good tool to combat Naxalism. This act also democratizes forest governance because of the community forest rights. So the community will themselves administer their forest resources. So this democratizes the forest governance. What are the challenges in this Forest Rights Act? First thing is administrative apathy. There have been reports of the claims of forest dwellers and scheduled tribes being rejected. There is a general apathy. And tribes also don't have that much of bargaining power. They are not vote bank and they are not also able to press for their demands. The low-level forest officials who are entrusted with the responsibility to implement this act, even they don't have wide awareness about this act. And the next thing is the tribals themselves have little awareness about this act, so they can't go and ask for their rights. And there is another criticism of the act itself is that it gives much importance to individual rights over community forest rights. Because of this, even encroachment is happening. If the community forest rights are given more preference, then it would become more about conservation. Because individual rights are given more importance, it gives way to encroachment. Now, the next challenge is from the states. The states are not vesting the rights into Gram Sabha. So, the powers of Gram Sabha are minuscule in this regard. The Gram Sabha effectively has become a toothless tiger. The next challenge is power tussle by forest bureaucracy. Forest bureaucracy who had significant control. Now there is a democratization of forest governance. So there is a general power tussle from forest bureaucracy. And there is also documentation bottlenecks in terms of recording how much land is there, how much land should be allocated. This kind of recording, it is a very labor intensive process. It takes time also, and because there are no records, it is also difficult to vest the property rights onto the tribals. Okay, so today we come to the end of the news analysis. Now we will see some questions. So this question is from Prelims 2013. The question says that under the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006, who shall be the authority to initiate the process for determining the nature and extent of individual or community forest rights, or both? The options are A. State Forest Department, B. District Collector or Deputy Commissioner, C. Tahsildar or BDO or Mandal Revenue Officer, and D. Gram Sabha. So there is a easy way to arrive at the answer here. See, these three options are from government side. Only this option is not from government side. And we saw that FRA democratizes forest rights. So obviously the answer must be D. Even if you have a little bit idea, you can still apply common sense and arrive at the answer. Now we'll discuss one mains question. While elucidating Article 25 and 26, critically examine the Supreme Court judgment on appointment of Archakas, that is priests, in Tamil Nadu Hindu temples. We already saw about Article 25 clause 2A and 2B, and there is Article 26 which says that any religious denomination has the power to regulate their affairs. But this has to be balanced with social justice. You will talk about the doctrine of essentiality. You will talk about why this kind of judgments, this kind of acts are important from the point of view of social justice, how it is inducing equality and equity, and at the same time you will provide a balanced conclusion saying that the religious rights should not be encroached upon by the government while promoting the agenda of social justice. This is a rough sketch of how you can handle this question. More you can learn by enrolling with our programs. That is the end of today's video. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. These are our socials. Follow us on all these platforms. Thank you. Signing off. This is Indumati.